Hello, everyone, and welcome to the final Broadway Q&A series brought to you by the Growing Studio and Playbill. For all things up to date, follow us at Playbill and at the Growing Studio. I'm super excited for our final guest today. We're going to do something a little different that we've never done before, and we're going to actually bring on a lighting designer to talk to us about his career, and I'm super excited to introduce the amazing Adam. Are you here with us, Adam?
I'm here. How's it going, Johnny?
It's amazing. How are you?
Oh, I'm actually doing really well. The weather's nice outside. Projects are starting to start back up again, and I can't complain.
That's awesome. Where have you been quarantined this whole time?
I have been in Harlem, Manhattan, the land of the Lenape tribe, and I've been here pretty much since the pandemic started. I've run out of town a couple of times to stay with relatives, but I've been here. What about yourself?
I've been I was in quite a few strange places. When everything kind of went down in March, I headed to Florida, and I was in Florida for like 2 months by accident because who knew that things were going to get so crazy. And then right around the time it was time for me to graduate from school, I came back up to New Jersey and graduated and then moved back home to my childhood bedroom, which you are seeing my lovely graduation from high school robe. It's really exciting.
Congratulations, by the way.
Thank you.
Graduated.
Thank you so much. So tell us a little bit about yourself, where you grew up, I guess your start into becoming a lighting designer, I'm sure at 5 years old, you weren't like, I want to be a lighting designer. Like, how did you get?
Actually, let me tell you. So I'm originally from New Orleans, Louisiana.
One of my favorite places in the planet.
It is one of the greatest cities in this world. I really grew up, though, in Dallas, Texas, DFW, a suburb of Dallas, Carrollton. And it's funny because one of the earliest memories I have into lighting design is I had to be 6. I was definitely in the first grade. And for Christmas, all I wanted was one of those multicolored disco balls. And to this day, I think that was one of the greatest Christmas presents I ever received, because it was this thing that rotated and it had all the lights on the wall. And I was just fascinated with that kind of party atmosphere. Because, at a young age, I used to want to own a nightclub, which is odd for a 6-year-old to want to be a producer of a nightclub. But I just really liked the energy. And I think I was coming off of the kind of the MTV Soul Train movement that was really fascinating to me. But my first gaze into the theater was I attended the local high school's production of The Little Shop of Horrors when I was had to be the 5th grade, 11 or 12 years old. And I walked into the space and the curtain was down. And I had been in theaters with the curtain was down for like presentations and awards before, but I had never seen the curtain open. That overture, that beautiful overture of Little Shop started, and the lights dimmed in the house, and this world kind of peeled out of the stage. And it was like watching television, but live. And you could feel kind of the breath. We don't like to talk about breath in the time of coronavirus, but you could feel the energy kind of pouring off the stage. You could feel the heat of the stage lights. You could feel that someone had crafted the scenery. They crafted the costumes in a way that I hadn't felt this otherworldly energy before. And when you're a kid, you watch things like Tom and Jerry and the Disney Channel, and they're always lights, camera, action. And you have this understanding in Hollywood and on Broadway that there's this director that sits in the director chair. There's the performers that you're seeing on stage, and there's like the stage crew, but you don't really know what they do. And what I found in sitting in that one production of Little Shop is that there was this higher energy that really was the design and production team, which was the lighting designer, the scenic designer, the sound designer, the book writer. You didn't think about these things a lot, but I had this epiphany, if you will, when I was about 11 or 12 years old, that this was the thing that was so awesome that I just had to be a part of this tangible art in a way that television was not providing.
Absolutely. And so after you had seen that production, what did you go on to work in the stage crew in high school?
So I got to middle school and they had a drama club. They didn't really have a class. I think in your older years of junior high, you could then take the drama class, but as an entering student, you couldn't really take a class. You were just part of the drama club. And it was really just a teacher who, she taught English, she did cheerleading, she ran the pep rallies, she also did the drama club. She did everything artistic in school. And I showed up, and I was like, what can I do to be a part of the kind of technical side? She was like, well, we don't really have any technical things here, right? Because we were doing theater in a cafeteria, and it wasn't even like a cafetorium where they're like, oh, there's a stage. It was a level of the cafeteria that we would just point all the chairs towards and do a show. And she was like, if you'd like to just be a part of this, sure. So she had purchased a spotlight from like Guitar Center. We had, the district had installed like 3 little pars to point at the stage. And I just found the way to make art out of this. So I was in there fixing the lights and, bumping through the colors on the spotlight, just trying different things. And I became like, what they'd call them in high school, the techie of the middle school theater department or theater drama club. And, it was just kind of weird to kind of be a pioneer in that way, that after I left, they actually got small grants to then buy equipment, to then have, more than just a little CD player with a microphone put up to it, playing the sound effects. They put on full blown, I think a couple of years ago, they put on their first musical, which is amazing. We can't imagine having produced a musical at that school at that time. But now there are the resources there to kind of inspire more generations. And they also have a official theater class you can take your first year through your final year, which is really cool.
Wow, that's so awesome. And what an interesting way to get started.
Just doing things, and I'd bring I had black lights at home. I'd bring the class and show the other students, and they're like, oh, we could do a puppet show. I had strobe lights. It was just, honestly, I'm sure I wore my parents' pockets out with just running to.
We're just like collecting lights pretty much as a child.
That's all I wanted, was to create atmospheres. That's all I really wanted to do.
Really awesome. Well, let's get into some questions from viewers. I'm going to put my glasses on because today I'm reading from my iPad, and the eye's not too strong today.
Those glasses are perfect. You look amazing.
Thanks. Okay, so our first question is from Zach, and he's from Fort Worth, Texas. And he wants to know, he's asking, how would you handle working with a director that is hesitant on any design choices / already has their mind made up on a concept that doesn't line up with yours?
Oh my gosh. Listen, Zach. So I jokingly say all the time, 80% of my job is people management. And I actually don't think I'm lying when I talk about that. And I think that extends beyond what we do as theatrical designers. Working in any office space, it's similar in that a lot of the process is working with a director or a producer or another design team, and you're trying to have the most collaboration as possible. But oftentimes someone might have a vision that might be different than yours. And at that point, it's kind of like vision management, right? So what you're working with is trying to then, at the end of the day, you want to succeed in a vision, and it might not necessarily be your vision, but the director is the director, and we have to support a singular vision. So even though it might be against your immediate belief, and Lord have mercy, I hope it's not something that is inherently dangerous to yourself, causing harm, you should support them as best as you can. And there are times, all designers will tell you this, there are times that we want to put down our foot and really speak for what we think is the strongest option. But sometimes it actually works best to jive with them for a little bit and see if you can get through the production. And at the end of it, you can look back and say, is this still working? Is this not still working? I think when you're speaking on behalf of like working on a show on Broadway or Off-Broadway, nowadays we sit in previews for about 4 weeks, and you get a chance every night to kind of change out what the outcome could be. But if you're working more at the collegiate level or a smaller regional level, you don't really get a chance, and it kind of becomes what it is. But at the end of the day, you can't take it personally, right? Like if the director doesn't necessarily like your vision, don't take it personally. It's just a part of the process. And they might have insight that you might not know about, and they might not be communicating that to you, but you really want to support them as much as you can.
That's an excellent answer.
I feel like I beat around a bush there, but that's really the best way to kind of look at that.
Yeah, for sure. Our next question is from Paige, and she's in Maryland, and she wants to know what's your favorite part of the lighting design process.
Oh my gosh, favorite part. If you had asked me pre-coronavirus, I would say the research, the creation. I love being a part of new plays where the director and the writer or a producer will come up with an unfinished script, and being able to dive in with fresh eyes that have never seen it before and creating these worlds as you go. That's really what jazzes me. I love diving into things that are like research oriented, finding imagery, going out and photographing things that really jazz me. Finding books. I read a lot, and I have a lot of coffee table books that have lots of imagery that I'm often referencing. And that's kind of what I would have said if the industry would have kept going as it was going. But honestly, after coronavirus, I'd have to say the thing I look forward to the most is being able to see my colleagues and friends every day. I haven't seen them in so long, and when I meet with them on Zoom, it's like, you remember the time we were doing this, and or remember the time that happened. And I love the kind of community, especially in the theater. We're such a small, tight-knit community, and that's really what I love the most. Such an accepting, great world to be in the theater.
Absolutely true. Our next question is from Our next question is from Rebecca S. And she's in New York City. And she wants to know, what would you tell your past self about breaking into the theater business?
Oh my gosh, breaking into the theater business. My past self. I'd probably tell him to chill out and relax. My mother would agree with this statement. Sometimes I can be high strung about something that's out of my control. I very, very rarely have moments in the theater of this, but I'll be at home, I'll be in the shower having a thought about something, and I get really worked up and flustered if something's not working on the stage earlier that day. And I've kind of learned to cope with that as I've been designing. But when I was in college, things used to just tear me apart. People would give a note like, I don't think green works for the scene. And that would just ruin my day. And I wish I could tell myself to relax and enjoy yourself, right? Because when I look back on college, yes, I had fun, but I could have had so much more fun. And I wish someone had told me it was going to be gone in a blink of an eye. Because it was like day one of orientation, graduation. I hardly remember the in-between because it was flying so fast and taking so many classes and being so stressed out about X, Y, and Z. But I wish I had just enjoyed it. So that's what I tell my younger self.
Awesome. Well, I have a guest who wants to come on and ask you a question, a budding lighting designer.
Hello.
Hi, Cameron.
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing well. How about yourself?
I'm doing all right. Jonathan, thank you so much for having me here.
Of course. Me and Cam went to school together. Fun fact.
Amazing. And I love your Lion King poster in the back. I actually have
thank
a
you.
Lion King collection up here.
Oh, really?
And I had a program where that Carmen Jones program is, but I just changed it like yesterday. So.
Oh, okay. That was the first Broadway show I ever saw, so I kind of just put it up on my wall because I was like, I want to remember that day.
Absolutely.
So I want to ask, what was the one gig that sort of started your career? Was there something that specifically happened that sort of helped propel your career to where you were today?
Oh my gosh. Wow. That's actually a really good question. And I could almost say every production I work on, I could point it to an experience that happened before.
Sure.
But I would say jumping in on the design scene, if you will, it was probably Carmen Jones.
Okay.
Was directed by John Doyle, starred Anika Noni Rose and her amazing Lortel-winning performance. And that was a show that it kind of just, I feel like the stars aligned because I was kind of in the last few years of my associate design career, if you will. I was working with the outrageously talented Jane Cox, who's done so many brilliant shows on Broadway, so many beautiful regional shows. And we were working on a production because she's almost predominantly John Doyle's resident lighting designer. And she had to split because she needed to get somewhere or work on another project, probably work on one of the like a million amazing shows she's done. And so I was left in previews as the associate designer. And John Doyle just was not hesitant to come over and have a conversation or talk about doing notes. And he just really enjoyed the energy of the room. Like the atmosphere was wonderful on that project. So we ended that and I was like, oh, that was great. I'd love to get to work with this group of designers again. Lo and behold, 3 months later, he calls me up on the phone, which is wild because in 2017 or whatever year it was, it's kind of rare that someone will call you on the phone and offer you a job. It's usually this whole background of we have to send an email, we need to get in touch with your agent. It's this big, to do. But John Doyle got a hold of my phone and he called me and he was like, Adam, do you know who this is? I'm like, oh, who is this? He's like, it's John Doyle. And he has an amazing Scottish accent. He's like, I'd like to offer a show with you. And I was like, absolutely. But I couldn't act too excited because I didn't want to sound too green.
Of course, yeah.
I'll take all this in and I'm going to think about it, even though the answer was yes. So I took 2 days to think about it. I called him back. I was like, I would be delighted because you don't want to seem like you're too excited. But on the inside, I was doing backflips and celebrating and the fireworks were going off in my brain. So that was kind of the show that started this design career that I've had. I've been so thankful for that opportunity.
Absolutely. That's great. And, Jane Cox, she's one of my most favorite designers. My favorite show of all time is The Color Purple.
Oh, yeah.
I can watch that show so many times and just still love it. So I find it amazing that you've worked with her and John Doyle as well. And that's absolutely phenomenal. So
brilliant. The two were brilliant.
Oh, my gosh, yes. So thank you very much for the question.
Not a problem. Pleasure to meet you, Cameron, and stay in touch.
Well, yes, absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much for joining us today.
Oh my gosh. I just want to add on, I didn't tell him that, but The Lion King was also my first Broadway production. I saw it in 2003, I believe, and my jaw was just on the floor from that first kind of belt. It was just an electric production. I've seen it 3 times since, but it really is. And I'd be interested to meet other young lighting designers and wonder if they've had a similar experience. And I'd love to know if they're in lighting because of The Lion King, if that inspired something in them. I'd be really curious to know.
That's so interesting. And interesting, maybe you'll do a little study on that. Take a little.
Yeah, it's amazing.
All right. Well, our next question is from Doug Fleming in Oklahoma City. And he wants to know, Adam, for my high school stagecraft students, what is their best pathway towards a career in tech theater? What are some practical things they can do to prepare themselves?
Oh my gosh, there is so much information in this world. I actually think finding an organization to work with, the United States Institute of Theater Technology, or USITT as we call it for short, has a number of resources for specifically educational and academic theater. And they also have regional conferences, if you will, where high school age students or college age students can tap into these resources and attend these panels or moments that I think really give you an insight, and they connect people who are working in the field in your region to you. I also think writing local theater companies is an amazing opportunity, because I remember growing up in Dallas, I would just write, the local community theater, the local regional theater, and I'd ask if I could just come shadow, if I could come see how it works. Because I think honestly, seeing how the machine works is eye-opening for a lot of young designers or technicians. And I think lots of times there are many roles that you might not be introduced to yet. Because when you're in high school, you're like, oh, maybe I could be a carpenter, or maybe I could be a lighting designer. But you don't realize there are first-hand stitchers, and there are people who are TDs specifically for events, or there are TDs who only load in shows. So there's kind of a multitude of jobs that if you don't get a chance to really see what they are, hear about them, you might not know and get jazzed by them. So I really think finding organizations like USITT. I also think going online, I know it was something that was helpful for me, is finding videos. There's an amazing series of so many Broadway shows, like Wicked is one of them, where they have these behind the scenes documentaries of how the design process came to life. how the lighting design informed this piece. And I think those are also things that'll help you talk about theater at a higher level that goes beyond, we did this cool thing with a 2x4 and we put LED lights on it, it turned on. It kind of is the how and the why, and why we do the things we do, which I think is great.
Awesome. Doug has another question that I'm going to ask from him. And he's asking, since his students are currently on virtual education, what are some ways they can practice lighting design at home, even without access to our lighting equipment? And he wants to know, do you recommend any apps or resources?
Apps or resources? Well, I have to push this because this is a new piece of technology that I think is going to ripple through our industry. And Electronic Theater Controls, ETC, has just released a 3-dimensional program, which is similar to, in the concert field, we'd call it what you see is what you get, which is kind of how Beyonce puts together her shows. And it's called Augmented 3D. And what it does is it takes the technology that ETC has already put in their boards and creates a virtual 3-dimensional space. That could be your theater, it could be a park, it could be wherever you're putting on a show. It gives you the atmospherics so you can then see what that piece might look like in a virtual setting.
Wow.
And I think that is something that I think right now, in a time where we can't go physically to a light lab, it's a wonderful way to kind of have this piece of technology. And I think at a young age, students will be a little more malleable to it, because quite honestly, the older I get, the harder it is for me to take on new technology because I'm used to the way it used to be. But I think if you just get on that program and play with it, it's completely free. All you have to do is go online, download it from their site. And it's a kind of a whole new toolkit. They actually just recently had a competition, if you will, where they were given the stage design and light plot for Hamilton, and they recreated a number of the songs from Hamilton. It was really awesome.
Wow.
So there's just a number of things and a multitude of information out there on Augmented. There are also simpler programs. I cannot remember the other names right now, but they're basically, if you turn on a light from this side, what does it do? If you turn on a light from this side, what is, the positions we use, which also would be amazing. But I'm going to be completely honest with you. The thing that kind of jazzes me the most about what we do is that, like I'm sitting here in a simple setup now, you can just have like a simple lamp or something and see what happens if you go like this, you go like that. Maybe there's a project where you have to recreate a famous scene from a film and you're doing Dracula and you have something like this. I find playing with physical things and physical space to be a lot more stimulating than dimensional 3D things, because I find your brain can grasp what happens if I, make a shadow here versus there. What does that texture look like? I find just using something as simple as a lamp in your house is kind of the first things that you can really use to create these worlds, and it's kind of the simplest form. I feel like I'm rambling now, but I hope that answered that question for Doug.
You definitely did answer it. Chrissy from home, I don't know where that is, wants to know, what is the strangest or hardest request you've had from a director?
The strangest or hardest request? I think almost every lighting designer has received this request at some point in their career, but the strangest request is always, can you bend a beam of light mid-stage and make a 45-degree angle, right? Like, that's often the request. Like, can't this light just bend mid-stage? Unfortunately, physics does not allow us to do that unless there is a mirror, right? Because lighting is, quite frankly, invisible till it hits a surface, and it's going to keep going in the straight path. Well, not technically straight, but pretty much where the reflector is sending it. So that's always a hard one. And every now and then you'll get a choreographer. It's always in dance too, that'll be like, can we make this light make a 45-degree angle? You could definitely fake that idea, right, with 2 instruments or using some type of beam bender idea. But light does not just automatically bend. It also does not just automatically stop, because a lot of directors will be like, can't we just get this light not to hit the floor, not to hit, something? It's got to either, there has to be a surface it falls to. We minimize it as much as possible, but it's really hard to just make a beam disappear midway through its flight, if you will.
When you figure it out, let us know, okay?
Oh, I will patent it and hopefully become a billionaire. So.
Our next question is from Caroline Paulson, and I'm gonna guess on a scale from 1 to 10. She wants to know how hard can it be to lighting design a show professionally.
A scale of 1 to 10. Oh my gosh, how hard? I've had professional shows that felt like they were a 3. I guess 10 is the hardest, right?
Yeah,
a 3, where it was just a pleasurable experience. I've also had professional shows that were a 10. I've had non-professional shows that were a 10 as well. But quite honestly, beyond the physical realm of completing my art and doing a show from beginning to end, I think the thing that stresses me the most is the pressure that people outside of the theater put on it. You know, if there's a show that's going to open and there's a whole lot of buzz and there's already a ton of press releases and these beautiful images of what it could look like, that often adds a little stress to your process because you want to then live up to the expectation. And I think living up to an unrealistic expectation is just going to stress you out all day. Whereas when I feel like there is no expectation for the piece, I feel like I have a peace of mind that allows me to then just do the piece and not feel so stressed out. And I also, again, when we're talking about relationships in the theater, if there's someone on the design team or a director or a producer or an artistic director who has a different vision than the design team, that also could add to the stress of how to accommodate all of these ideas within the limitations you have. But I mean, if I had to average the stress I feel from all my designs, I would say going to work puts me at about a 6 on an average day. I would say if I wake up in the morning, I'm feeling pretty good. It's like an average amount of stress.
That is amazing. Our next question is from John Young, and he's quarantining in Norman. Don't really know where that is.
Oklahoma.
Thank you. And he wants to know who have been some of the professional design mentors to you, and what have you learned from them?
Oh my gosh. So first and foremost, one of the greatest mentors in my life is a brilliant lighting and projection designer. His name's Driscoll Otto. His work's been seen at the Santa Fe Opera, the Metropolitan Opera, regional theaters all over the country, theaters in Europe. And you know, Driscoll was really my first mentor, the first designer I really assisted outside of school. Literally, I graduated on like a Saturday and I was assisting him on like a Monday. And honestly, what I learned from Driscoll was just so much style and how to have conversations with other people. I feel like he's such a good people person and he's so smooth. And the way he talks to directors is so just magnetic and exciting. He's someone that I'd say if you were in a large crowd of 1,000 people, you'd want to go talk to this guy. You'd want to go shake his hand. And he just had such a welcoming energy. And what I really like about how he works, because I've moved on from assisting him, but he has a whole slew of new young designers, is that he always wants to support his team and lift them up, right? So he always felt like if he couldn't take the show, he was going to pass it on to one of his proteges, if you will. And I feel like I learned so much about show business from him. Just like, what's it like to, you know, a lot of young people want to know what it's like to pay your taxes as a designer. They want to know what it's like to join the union. They want to know what it's like to sign a contract. And he really taught me so much about that and kind of opened my eyes to these other sides of the universe of theater design, which was really wonderful. Other mentors I've had in my most recent years before I've gone off and just started designing on my own. Jane Cox, of course, who I've already spoken so greatly of. And, you know, she's another designer who's so wonderful in the room, but her aesthetic is also amazing. It's different than a lot of other people because I think she has more of the, I'd say the British European style of lighting design that you might see in someone like Paula Constable, which is beautiful. And literally the last project I was an associate on was with Ben Stanton on Broadway. And Ben opened my eyes to working on the more commercial side of theater and playing that game. Because there's the game of regional theater, and then there's the big commercial, you know, when your producer is Thomas Kail or who else was on that show? All these famous people. It's different than working on something where it might be a nonprofit theater in the middle of Oklahoma. So Ben was really wonderful of sitting down and just like helping me through the kind of working with the crews at a certain level and figuring out, calling the shops at a certain level. Because honestly, at the regional theater level, you call a shop, you have an order, and they'll, work it out with you. But when you're on Broadway, it's like this whole nother world of paperwork. Really, it's just the next level, if you will. And, how to play that game or how to have a seat at that table is just kind of like the next step, which was really amazing to learn from him. So that's the three.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Our next question is from Carl Butcher in Upper Marlboro, Maryland. And he wants to know any simplistic lighting design suggestions or advice when mounting community theater or high school productions. And he wants to know specifically for people of color. For like shows like The Wiz or In the Heights.
Right. So the now everyone's gonna know my secret. I honestly think so. Kind of the simple piece of advice. I got to stop leaning back because the lighting like the freaked out on me. The most simple piece of advice whenever you're approaching lighting performers of color is you're not. I think a lot of people look at it as you're just lighting their skin tone, which would be some form of beige or tan. But actually what I'm looking at in a cast of performers of color is their undertone, right? And that's when you get into, I myself look kind of red right now, but I have a very olive aesthetic. On camera, you have kind of a more almond aesthetic, right? And what you're looking at is those undertones and how to lift them. And this is something that there's been a ton of articles going around about lighting for film and television for people of color, and they're addressing the same thing. So the way you get that beautiful Viola Davis glow on the cover of a magazine is you're lifting those undertones of her skin. So you're really not trying to put, a lot of people say, oh, and I kind of hate this response, but they're like, oh, you have to put like a purple or you have to put some type of brown. Actually, that's just going to muddy the whole image up. What you really want is if they have an olive tone, you want to have a color that supports it on the color wheel. So I would start with like a pale blue or pale green, which doesn't sound amazing. But it really doesn't sound amazing at first, but once they get on stage and you have that like pop and they look like they're glowing and they look fresh and dewy, that's what you're doing it for. That's what you're selling. So really you got to look at the undertones of the skin to really get that to come out, and that'll give you the multi-dimensional shine that you're looking for, and it'll give the skin this beautiful glow.
That's awesome. Now, a question from me to you. When you were in school and you were studying lighting design, did you notice, did you feel like you were kind of pioneering the way that people were thinking about lighting people of color, as you were going throughout your career, or have you had any instances where you kind of had to, I guess educate someone on something and be like, hey, I think if you think about it this way, you'll get a better result?
So when I was in school, and this kind of speaks to the industry as a whole, I did not have the opportunity to light very many designers of color, unfortunately, because our program was full of predominantly white folks. And it was funny because it wasn't until literally last semester of my senior year, I was sitting in a room and we're having our final kind of senior moment in the space where we all got together and we were talking. And I was looking around, and we had like one or two other people of color in the program as designers, but I had never really taken a moment to step back and see that I was the one person of the one black guy in the room. You know what I mean? Because all I see is white people, and I just kind of felt like I was a part of that community. And it wasn't until I got to New York and started working on more black shows that I realized that's kind of what I was missing in my undergrad. And it's really, when I was working on my first couple of shows in New York and people were acknowledging that the black folks in them look different than all the other black shows, I didn't think anything of it. I was just like, oh, they must have really liked the lighting design. But then I found that producers and directors were coming to me and asking me to work on their pieces because they wanted that quality. They wanted their production photos to look like magazine quality. And quite honestly, all of that didn't really come down on me till probably the last few months, when we've been kind of examining this industry with a magnifying glass. And, you know, I think for every designer of color, it's different, because I'm sure if you asked Alan Lee Hughes, who's been a pioneer of this industry as kind of the one Black designer for decades, he probably wouldn't even say he knew it was happening. He was just doing his job. And that's what it feels like. We're all just doing our job. And it wasn't until last year, this year, you know, June, July, August, that we were, you know, re-examining this industry and how we do that. Yeah, I don't know if that answered that question or not, but
I think so. I think so. I think it answered the question, but also gave us a lot more information and insight into your job, and also why you've become so popular, because you are using your knowledge, and also you're educating people on the differences of lighting, people with lighter skin tones to people that are more chocolate or almond or yellow, and all the different colors, which is super amazing.
My best.
The next question is from Andrew Kanan from Wayne State University, and he wants to know, what is the best lesson you have learned as a growing lighting designer over the course of your career?
Oh my gosh, the best lesson.
I know, all these like best, those are always the hardest, aren't they?
What lesson have I learned? So many lessons, but what is the best? Sorry, my family, I have like the notifications of text. They're all going to start laughing at me in a second, but they're pouring in text messages right now while I'm talking, and I got to turn that off. But the best lesson, you know, I think I really learned how I need to present my ideas in a room, especially since my first show was Carmen Jones. I was surrounded by literally Tony Award winners who had been working for longer than I've been alive. And I remember feeling so intimidated because no one in the room had a notepad. No one was taking notes. I was in there with a little sketch pad ready to write down whatever, because I have the memory of like, you know, a goldfish. So I'm not going to remember everything. But, you know, the director's in there talking all this serious high level art, and everyone's just like shaking their heads, and they like are remembering all these measurements and these things. And what I realize is that they've been doing it for so long that, you know, there's only so many ways to reinvent the box, right? And,
Yeah.
they can remember these things because it's like becoming a server at a restaurant that knows there's 47 things on the menu, and all you have to do is change out pickles for mayonnaise or whatnot. And so I'm in there, and it's like my first big show, and I'm writing things down, and they're having these serious conversations. I'm just writing it down, and they turn to me and they go, "What do you think about that, Adam?" And I was like, now I have to speak, and my brain's trying to catch up to all these steps they're going by. And I can't even remember what I said, but they were like, "That's an astute point." And then they like keep going. And I was like, you know, I don't know if I'm speaking to the best lesson I learned well, but I think it's kind of figuring out how to present yourself in the room and the things to say. And that's come from being in the room with the designers I would like to be with. And what I was finding was it's the kind of, you can't present yourself as the green person in the room, but you can't also be overly cocky with how you present yourself. And that is the fine line that you have to really tote, because so many people get to the end of their undergrad career or the end of their graduate degree, and they graduate and they think they're the best thing that's ever left whatever university. I'm going to call out NYU and Yale because you all know who I'm talking about. So when you graduate from these programs, right, you then have to realize you went from being the big fish in the small pond to being the small fish in the big pond. And you need to tote the line between I am an artist and I am a fresh artist who has these ideas. Because so easily you can be the new guy in the room that's just talking way too much and saying way too many things and kind of showing off a little too much, which I think is at the end going to be a problematic thing for you when you're in this room with all these great designers and you just sound like you're rattling off anything. So really just learning from being in the room with other people. Now getting to the room, that's a whole nother story.
This next question is from Laura in Murray, Kentucky, and she wants to know, what attracts you to a show, and how do you choose which projects you want to work on, if you get to choose?
Right. So really, in the beginning, I was just getting offers and accepting anything because at the end of the day, I got to pay my rent. And within recent years, I'm asked to do a lot of reimagining works of revivals, or I'm asked to design completely new pieces. And quite honestly, I'll receive a script in my email or in the mail, and I'll read over it. And if it doesn't speak to my soul, I'm not really interested, because you're going to be with a new play from the moment the script is written all the way through opening night. And that could be anywhere from 3 months to a year. So if you're not interested on day one, you might as well let it go. And what you will find is that not every project is for you. I think in the beginning, and it is good to say this to young designers, you don't want to ever turn anything down because you never know if it's going to work for you. But once you kind of develop an aesthetic or a niche or a market you like to work in, if the project's not for you, quite honestly, you're the wrong designer, right? So I don't think, I can't even think of something right now. Spot and drop musicals. So something like Hello Dolly, or an old beautiful show that has 37 backdrops and 257 spotlight cues. That's not necessarily something I'm interested in. I would make it work, and I'm sure it would be a decent looking production, but there's a slew of other designers that could probably design that production even better and have so much more to add to that. Whereas I'm interested in creating these kind of uncharted territory, new pieces that are done maybe in the round, or it's done with a piece of technology that's brand new, or finding kind of these different avenues to make these shows. That's what jazzes me. And those are the pieces I'm interested in taking. Whereas, you know, the pieces that don't speak to that, I would gladly do, but it's not, it's a paycheck at that point.
Gotcha. This next question is from Yuli Calderon in Oklahoma. And they want to know, what do you think is the biggest thing that you did that got you where you are today?
The biggest thing, I can't speak to one very specific moment, but since I was young, I was always an entrepreneur of some kind, right? Like I would take my grandmother's water bottles, go down in the block and sell it $2 a bottle. And all of a sudden I've made, you know, a profit, right? Like when I was in first grade, I found a coloring book of Pokemon because that was really big. And I would trace the Pokemon and then sell that for 50 cents, right? So I've always been a businessman forever. And I've always been, you know, when my family's together, I was always producing plays and being the chef of a restaurant and charging them. So I've always, I would say the kind of the want to always be involved in the business side, things like brand marketing have always interested me, that, you know, and stuff like that, that I don't think most people think about when they're going into design, but you really are a small business. You are your own, you know, marketing team, public relations team, design team, right? Because you have everything from your website down to how you present in front of other people. And I think that is what has kind of carried me along and helped me build my aesthetic and build my kind of castle of design, if you will. So it's just kind of this interest in entrepreneurship and being a business person, I guess.
Nice. So I know that you're working with Roundabout at a mentorship program. So could you tell me a little bit about that? Well, tell us, because there are people watching.
Yeah, so I am one of the mentors on a Roundabout theater company mentorship that they've been doing for years. And it's actually run by the brilliant Tess James, who's an amazing designer in her own right, also works with Jane Cox. And what we do is we give opportunities to New York City and surrounding area schools and students to be a part of this program, where similarly to the question earlier about high school students, right? Like anyone can apply to be in this, and they go through a program where you learn about lighting design, costume design, sound design, projections. I actually don't know if they're doing projections yet, but it's a really great program that meets a couple of times a month, and they have the opportunity to then choose a mentor in the field. So I'm a part of a collection of quite honestly, legendary scenic designers and stage managers and costume designers who all donate their time to this program. and get to link up with these students and kind of show them an insight into the field. So in a non-coronavirus time, we would invite them to our projects we're working on or go see shows. In the time of coronavirus, we're doing a lot of online panels and discussion and video kind of stuff online on Zoom.
Yeah. And how do people get involved with that?
You apply. There's a application process. I wish I had better information specifically on that at this moment. I'm sure someone's watching and are like, go to this website. If you go to the Roundabout, or if you Google Roundabout Theater Mentorship Program, there'll be tons of information online. And really, I hope that the technical directors and drama teachers help kind of spread the word of this program around, because we do have a lot of amazing students, but I'm always interested in kind of casting a larger net, right? And maybe someday this will be a program that could go nationwide, if you will, and inspire more mentorship programs in the regional circuit, or maybe other regional theaters will start creating this. Because what's really lovely about the mentorship program is that we're really giving the BIPOC community an opportunity that might not always exist, because in a lot of the other states and a lot of the other cities, they don't have these opportunities. So I love that Roundabout has gone out and found the mentees that would like to be a part of this program, and they're doing a really great job with it. So
that's really awesome. Another question from John in Oklahoma. He wants to know if you watch the Super Bowl halftime shows, and if so, what is your favorite one that you've seen so far?
So the best, I'm gonna let you finish, but the all-time greatest Super Bowl halftime show was the Beyonce halftime show. I think everyone knows this at this point. The surprise with Destiny's Child popping out of the stage is just like the icing on the cake. And she's also the only performer to perform for the entire 13 minutes, 45 seconds, virtually by herself. So I think that in itself speaks volumes, not only for what her production design team did with the aesthetic and quite literally turning a football arena into the Beyonce concert. They've done a really great job. And I will talk about that show. You know, when I'm teaching classes, I often reference that show. Yeah, the Beyonce Super Bowl halftime show.
Have you yourself ever wanted to design a concert or like a big stadium tour?
Yeah, I think in the world that the possibilities are boundless. I think something as grand as the Olympics really excites me. I love kind of broad gesture ideas as much as I love really small concepts. But what's really fascinating about something huge like the Super Bowl halftime show and the Olympic opening ceremony, which is often put together by similar design teams, is that you have a chance to take 30 to 100,000 people in the stadium and create a movement that they all feel at one time. The best thing I can equate it to is in Avatar, the film with the James Cameron's Avatar with the blue people, and they're all sitting around the tree and they're having this moment together. That energy is only the energy you get from those large scale concert experiences. Because, if you're just watching a football game, it's so much noise and yelling and talking, which is exciting. But the moment Beyonce comes out, it's like your heartbeat syncs up and your breathing elevates, and it's like everyone becomes this one thing. And they've come out with these wristbands and the lights on the
I remember going to
literally a part of this experience, and it really is as close to the kind of indigenous people of Avatar that you can get on this earth, which is really amazing. I guess meditation or visiting a large house of worship is similar. And it's funny because we often talk about in the theater and the concert industry how the stadium or the theater is like our temple, and that really is true. So
yeah, I definitely remember being like 17 and going to the Taylor Swift concert and like having my wristband on and like all the lights like turning off at the same time, and then all you see is a sea of blue, and you're like, whoa, this is like
exactly.
Our next question is from George R. in New York City, and he wants to know, did you ever have an insane situation on set and how you had to handle it?
An insane situation. Insane. How do I qualify?
fire?
It's so funny because as in the last couple of years I haven't had it, but when I was assisting programming associate work, it's funny because both of these stories are with Driscoll Otto. God bless him. We were in a theater teching through a show and the theater caught fire. So that was exciting. And it's so funny because there was wood paneling on the sides of the audience. And we just hear like it sounded like a campfire. It sounded like popcorn popping. And all of a sudden the smoke starts filling the space. And, you know, the sound designer, probably one of the bravest souls I know, goes running towards the fire and he starts like patting the wall. He's like, yep, that's hot. That's a fire. And I'm like, okay. And so by the time he finished, you know, even gathering it was a fire, I was like out the fire exit. Cause I don't know. I grew up, if there's a fire, you got to go. I'm not interested in waiting on an explosion or anything. So at that time we get up and we're, you know, texting the production manager and they're like, why don't you take an extended lunch or something? So we went out for lunch and something like 6 or 8 hours later, we picked back up on tech again. So we kind of missed a day of tech. But because of that incident, everyone was super willing to work with us. And we kind of flew through tech and it was still an amazing show. But that was probably the wildest singular experience I've had in a theater for sure.
Have you ever had like a lighting board like malfunction and like all your programming be erased or anything?
Not in a very long time. Back when we used to have floppy disk boards, there was a couple of stagehands moving the light board from like the tech table to this road case, and they dropped it and it shorted out the board and we lost everything. The floppy disk was destroyed. The board was destroyed. But in the age of technology, it's kind of like when Windows got better at saving Word, right? Like when you used to write on Word, it would crash every 3 words because it was trying to process spell check and all these new things on, you know, like Windows 97. But now we have it to the point where there's auto saving. Your programmer gets good at saving every time you do something major. It's backed up to a thumb drive. You can even back it up onto a cloud. So there's so many ways that you can avoid that kind of process. I also think the light board companies, I was talking to a representative not that long ago, was talking about how they're engineering these boards because they really need to last a long time and they need to do one solid thing really well. So they've gotten really good at making sure the boards don't crash anymore, which honestly, we have to thank, you know, Intel and Microsoft for kind of creating these indestructible computers. It still happens if you get a really old board and you're in an older house. It will happen occasionally, but it's mostly avoided nowadays thanks to thumb drives and back saving everything.
And storage. I have a few questions for you that are more get to know Adam questions. So what is your favorite lighting board to use?
My favorite light board. So I was raised on the ETC Express and Expression family of the late 90s. So I think in that syntax. And because of that, they've integrated a lot of that syntax into the newer versions. So I really like working on an ETC EOS and I like working on an ETC Ion. If I'm doing something that's for more of a concert or dance tour, I like to work on the Grand MA or the MA2 as they call it. Because quite honestly, the special effects functions on those boards is really awesome and really good. And you could literally recreate the Beyonce Super Soul halftime show on those boards, which is what it was programmed on. So they're really good at that kind of thing. But in a theater, if you're just trying to do a linear Q stack, ETC Ion, ETC EOS. Sure.
What is your favorite lighting fixture?
My favorite light fixture. I haven't had this question in a long time. I would say a fixture I use at almost every show I do, but you wouldn't assume it's that fixture, is the Mac Aura, which is a little wash instrument, and I often put a little face on it so it looks more like a traditional light fixture, and I like to use that in a very classical theatrical manner because they're very quiet. They have a very good punch. They're a beautiful throw. I have that in like the last 10 shows I've designed. My favorite, you know, like the Cadillac or the Viper of instruments that I really like, and it only does one thing, is still to this day the original Clay Packy Sharpie, and it's just the little beam lights. again, in the Beyonce Super Bowl halftime show, there are all those little fixtures that made the fingers, the rays of light. They're workhorses. They're very bright. They do exactly what you want them to do. They have a new lineage called the Mythos that are also really slick and sexy. But the Sharpie is just undisputably one of the best concert fixtures that has ever been produced, for sure.
What is your favorite like source of light, I guess, to look out like out in the world?
Out in the world, people who know me well know I'm always staring up at the sky everywhere I go. We could be in a banana republic, we could be in the middle of New York, we could be out in Oklahoma, and I'm staring at the sky. I'd say sunlight really jazzes me, but if it's not sunlight, I'm really interested in fluorescent lighting that's not used in a traditional manner. So not like in an office building, but maybe something like there's a bus stop that has a fluorescent light on it. There's something about that flat light that actually is really interesting to look at, and it's all around New York City. So there's something kind of really buzzing about it. But if it's not sunlight, I would say it's like an urban fluorescent, maybe sodium vapor, but sodium vapor is a color that I don't love, but I love the kind of the downpour of light it creates.
What is your favorite gobo or breakup?
What is my favorite gobo? It's so funny because one of my assistants would be like, you use this one all the time. I think Sharp Breakup, it has these little like starfish looking things and circles, and it's kind of whimsical. So you can use it in a lot of musicals, but you can also sharpen it up and use it in like a series play. I would definitely say Sharp Breakup. I don't remember the numbers. It's like 77585 or something, but it's a good number.
Your favorite color of light to use?
Undisputably Lee 777, which is called Rust. It actually has a fantastic transmission rate for how heavy it is. It's a kind of amber color that, so color is all relative depending on what you put it with. It's an amber color that if you put it with like a kind of like the light coming through its window, it looks very orange, but if you were to put it with like a blue, it kind of takes on a white quality. So I sneak that into a lot of shows because it can be anything you want it to be. It's also a beautiful color. It looks good on any skin tone, and it does something for scenery that it's one of those colors. There's the artist, I can't remember his name, but he does work all over New York, where he found the shade of yellow that makes things almost look like it's in grayscale because it sucks all the color out, so it looks like it's black and white. 777 is very similar in that it can suck color out of something and create kind of this beautiful black and white or sepia tone kind of world, which is really kind of fun.
Nice. And my final question for you is, do you have any upcoming projects or initiatives that you're working on?
Projects and initiatives that I'm working on. So at this moment in the time of COVID-19, I am working on a project with the Prospect Theater Company called Visions, which is a series of music videos that's written and produced and directed by musical theater writers and performers. So that's what's coming up immediately. I'm also really excited to be collaborating with the Forest of Arden, which is Michael Arden's project, director. And what he's doing is he's creating these theatrical pieces oftentimes in outdoor spaces where, like the project that happened earlier this summer, there's a series of drivers who are in a car and they have their phone with them that tells them, you know, like turn left, like your regular navigation system. But also within this program, it can play music, it can play sound effects, you can hear the actors. So through your car speakers, you're having a full theatrical experience while looking out the car and seeing it happen in live time. So there's been a lot of collaborating with app developers on things like, if you walk towards a door, does the sound in your headphones get louder? Does it also happen when you walk through the door that the background changes, right? So you could be in one room where they're playing like 1960s pop music, and then you walk through a room and you're hearing Victorian music and you're looking at a candle on a chandelier. So all of these kind of things at the edge of technology that we're working on right now to kind of innovate the realm of theater outside of the box, literally the stage house. So we meet every week and we have the craziest discussions with everyone from like at Xylo Band to sound composers to people who want to write something about like unsolved mysteries in the Berkshires. So there's lots of crazy conversations. I would equate it to the closest thing I've ever had to feeling like I work at Google, because I feel like they just throw out ideas and all of a sudden we have the inventor of a chip there creating this technology with us. So it's been really exciting.
That's really amazing. Where can we follow you for all this awesome upcoming things that you are doing?
Absolutely. So I have a handle, which I own the monopoly on the handle. It's its Adam Honoré, my full name. Oh, it's on the screen. You can follow me on anything. If you want to find me on Instagram or Twitter or Facebook, I post to all of these sites. And also at my website, I'm updating all the time with different, unique, strange, exciting projects. So
that's amazing. Adam, thank you so much for joining us today. It has really been my pleasure. I've learned so much. I'm actually probably going to go on your website and stalk a little bit, and look at all your work. I wish you the best in the future. And I hope I get to work with you soon at some point. That would be amazing.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for having me. And it was an absolute pleasure.
All right. Take care. Thank you guys so much for joining us today. Please join us on Friday for our final college audition series with Millikan University and Webster University. Stay safe, everybody.